Let's talk about innovation allies for a moment. Now, first of all, what is an innovation ally? Well, there are many names. That's the first thing, and that makes it problematic. Some call them innovation champions, innovation heroes, innovation ninjas, innovation commandos. Basically, anything that starts with innovation and then it ends with something to conjure up an image of something else. The reason I call them innovation allies in this talk is because the people I'm talking about here are not the ones in your organization that are actually tasked with innovation. It's not your innovation lab or your innovation department or your researchers or whatever it is. It's not your chief designers. It's not people who go to work thinking, I'm going to innovate today. These are not the people I'm talking about. The people I'm talking about are the ones who are going to be affected by innovation, who are going to end up somehow feeling this happening. And I'm going to make the case that if you can just get 10% of them on board, if you can give just 10% of them in your organization some extra training in the philosophy of innovation, in the idea of what does innovation even mean, what does it look like, without being too particular about the specific innovation you're doing, then you have a huge advantage. So let's take an example. Wells Fargo, big American bank, about a year ago in early 2020, they came out and said, we're going to do digital innovation. We're going to do a lot of that. We're going to have a whole department for digital innovation because something like, I think, 43% of our customers use online banking, so we really need to do that. So they need to focus on digital innovation. That was the release, that was the press release. And there's this new digital innovation department. That's one thing. The second is there were some nice quotes about every department needs to be innovative and needs to think about redesigning the experience. Corporate talk for we're going to do better, which is great. There's some sort of support from the top leadership. There's a vision. It's strong. It's great. But in practice, now Wells Fargo has this new, beautiful, shiny innovation department, which is great. Probably they're doing amazing stuff. I hope they are. Why would I want them to have innovation allies spread throughout the rest of the organization? Why do I suggest that in this example case that they spend extra money, extra resources, extra time on training a random 10% across the organization, across all levels of it, all spheres, whether it's the lowest of the low, the highest of the high. It's people who are doing very creative stuff or very manual stuff or very kind of routine stuff or very different. So the reason is pretty simple. Because if you have 10% of your organization that have this mindset of innovation, even if they don't work with it, whether you're a janitor or you're an analyst or you're in marketing, it doesn't really matter. If you understand innovation on a deeper level, if you have an innovation mindset, then even if you're not directly engaged in the innovation projects or the innovation journeys or whatever we want to call them, when they end up on your desk or when they end up in a meeting that you attend or a hallway conversation that you're part of or a Zoom grumble or you're in the corporate gym and well, right now none of us are in the corporate gym because of COVID, but usually that was a thing. And when you're talking to other people, then you're going to be somebody supporting that, like small tendrils seeping from you into the rest of the organization. And just 10% could be incredibly powerful. Because when an idea comes, whether it comes from the top or the bottom or the side, it needs allies to get anywhere. It needs people who believe in it. It needs champions. And that means that if somebody comes to me, let's say, again, we're in Wells Fargo is the example, big, huge bank. The CEO and the top leadership team decide, we're going to do this thing. We're going to make Wells Fargo a different bank, and we're going to go this way. This is our strategy, and here are the innovations that we're going to implement. This is the route we want to take. Then it starts seeping through the organization, through memos, through conversations in meetings, through these hallway conversations. The old water cooler talk was a thing. It's not as much now, especially digitally, but people talk. And every time it meets a roadblock, every time somebody says, yeah, but do we really want to do that? And can we find a workaround? Then there's trouble. But if you've seeded 10% of the organization with people who don't believe in particular change, but they believe in change as a mindset, they believe in innovation as a bigger thing, then when those conversations happens, then you might just hit one of those 10% and say, well, but haven't you considered that it might be good for this or this reason? Or, well, but what if we look at the deeper layer? Or, yes, it might be annoying today, but what about in a year? Won't we be happy about it then? All the sorts of necessary questions that you ask when you're dealing with innovation. Because innovation is always annoying. Nobody likes being disrupted, especially at a job where you feel you're doing what you can, you kind of know what's going on, and then somebody comes in from the right and says, oh, but it has been decided that now we're working upside down. There's a simple psychological model. My friend Jesper Toft, who's a psychologist and a leadership coach, has explained this to me some time ago, and I loved it. It basically says you have situation, you have pain, and then you have growth, and then you have a new situation. And he says that's how it is psychologically speaking. So of course, innovation is messy. Innovation is annoying. Innovation is terrible. We love it when we do it to the other people. We disrupted them. Woo! Nobody likes being disrupted. Nobody likes being disrupted in their private lives. Nobody likes being disrupted in their professional lives. But we can get better at it. We can get used to it. We can train it. We can do something about that mindset. But it takes effort. And that's why I suggest that whether you are a huge bank like Wells Fargo, one used in the example, or you are a small organization, if you want to be more successful and you don't have the budget or the resources or the inclination to just put everybody through serious innovation training all the time, because of course that takes time, resources, and energy you might not have. If you want to stack the odds in your favor with minimal effort, then 10% of your organization, if you can get them to catch the idea virus, the feeling of innovation, if you can kind of sink that into their bones a little bit more, then you're going to have a huge advantage. Because those 10% spread out through an organization, they have an insane number of touch points, especially in today's networked organizations. There's an old story from the Danish Roskilde Festival, one of the biggest music festivals in Europe, and that there used to be the Five Guys, not the American burger chain, Five Guys, makes great burgers, but unrelated to them. No, in this festival organization, which was a volunteer-driven organization, and they did music festival, a yearly music festival for about 130,000 people, there were these Five Guys. And if you knew one of the Five Guys, you could make anything happen within the organization. That was the story. And if you didn't know any of the Five Guys, then it was very hard to get things to happen. Because these Five Guys were so well connected that sooner or later things ended up on their table, or they ended up in meetings where they would weigh in, and they were respected. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's definitely a thing. Every organization has these people whose tendrils kind of are a little bit longer than other people's. And I'm not saying you should find them and try to turn them into innovateurs. That can be tricky, but I'm saying that if you find 10% in your organization that are spread out across it at multiple levels and multiple divisions and multiple kind of spheres, then you're going to have quite a lot of reach, and your innovation attempts will be strengthened immensely, because every time there's one of these conversations where somebody is resisting it, somebody's annoyed, somebody's trying to work around the system, then one of those people has a good chance of, if not being in that conversation, at least being in one that is adjacent to that conversation and saying, hey, but haven't you considered if we do this? And how important is this really? When we all kind of boil down to how important is it that you have people who are willing to innovate? Because isn't it just, somebody says we're innovating and then we go, no. No, that is not how the real world works, because the real world is full of humans. And there's a beautiful story from Maersk, the Danish shipping giant, biggest shipping company in the world, huge 7-pointed star, pride of Denmark, all that thing. Lovely, lovely, lovely for world trade. Maersk, at some point, not too many years ago, but still years enough that I can tell the story, decided to go digital, seriously digital. And then they realized that if they wanted to go digital, at least that's the story, then they needed to make sure that their new centralized platform couldn't just be, shall we say, ignored by local country leaders. So they took some of their staff, they took quite a bit of their support staff and fired them. The reason? Well, if we're rolling something out from headquarters, some sort of global innovation, then if we take away the capacity of local leaders to ignore that by just making workarounds, then they're going to have to fall in line. It proved very, very effective. It was a bit of brutal strategy, but it proved very, very effective. And the reason that that sort of thing was done at all, crazy as it sounds, is that innovation happens when people go for it, and it is stopped when people stop it. Yes, there's a technological element. Yes, there's an organizational element. There's a cultural, there's all these things when you are trying to innovate. But at the end of the day, what stops innovation is often that somebody says, yeah, we're not doing that. Oh, so we were told that now we're all working on Slack instead of using emails. Yeah, but we're not doing that. We're still doing it. If there's somebody in that room who says, hey, but Charlie, maybe think of this, and there could be this reason, and here's maybe a study, or should we maybe just try it for a week, or whatever it is, that innovation ally is going to prove crucial. And the bigger your organization is, the more people are entrenched, the more they're settled. For example, if you're a huge American bank like Wells Fargo, they're pretty entrenched. The more it's important to have these innovation allies spread throughout your organization if you're going to do anything. Because if not, then it's so easy to have shiny plans at the management level, but once they kind of filter down, they don't really go anywhere, or they go somewhere very, very slowly. And it's great to have an innovation department. I love that. Love innovation departments, innovation centers. Anything innovation, I'm happy. But if you don't have that support that's spread out through the organization, then it's tricky. Innovation allies, innovation commandos, innovation champions, call them what you will. Get 10% of them. Give them that extra training. And you're going to have a much easier time getting your super tanker to turn faster. Thank you.